What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Embracer Group buying quite a lot of things from Square Enix. This was the huge news story as of, I guess, it was insanely late last night into this morning, and we'll just break it all down. So Embracer Group has acquired Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal, and a catalog of the IP. So they didn't just get those studios, they actually got the games, which I'll circle back around to why that's important in a second. This cost them $300 million, which many around the gaming industry, at least people that you consider insiders, etc., are looking to this as a steal. Now, it is understandable. People have kind of broken down why it was so cheap. $300 million doesn't sound cheap, right? But $300 million for 3 studios and 50 back catalog games as well as IPs, which includes Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, right? So these are no small things. Tomb Raider alone is very, very big. Deus Ex is a little bit smaller, but that's a massive one as well. Well, $300 million, why? Well, it's because, I believe the reason, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal had insanely low profit margins in 2021. They barely made more money than they spent. I think one of them was like 0.61%. It wasn't even 1%. So it was very low profit margin, which affects the price, which is why the price is. Now, let's talk a little bit about, is this good? Is this, what is it? I do look to this as being very, very good. In terms of Embracer Group, they're kind of, at this point, they're maybe the preferred one to buy a studio like this. I would have preferred Square Enix keeps them. I guess I could say that yesterday, I wouldn't mind it. But, the writing has kind of been on the wall. If you just take a couple of steps back, right? Square Enix has not done a great job in terms of they like to put out things like Balan Wonderland, things like that. They have like Outriders, and that is successful, right? But then you have things like Avengers, where they say, it wasn't a successful thing. Guardians of the Galaxy, right, failed to meet sales expectations. That's kind of their line, really, when any game comes out, seemingly Western games, right, games over here, they tend to come out, whether it does good or bad or whatever, they tend to come out and say it didn't meet their expectations. Square Enix is also going in a kind of different direction, one that I'm not a fan of, but they're going more into blockchain, AI, stuff like that. So they're literally using the $300 million they got from this to invest in those things. So do they still make games? Yes. In fact, a game like Life is Strange, they did list some franchises that Square Enix retains. Life is Strange is still theirs. Outriders is still theirs. They obviously still have Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, right? So they have their own stuff, but it's very clear they're basically pulling back almost entirely, not fully because of, the couple ones I just said, but almost entirely from Western game development. They'll have their Japanese kind of core of Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts and all of that stuff, and they'll keep a couple, Life is Strange, etc., over in the West, and that's kind of it. The rest of them, they just sold. Now, $300 million is a steal, in my opinion, considering, and I think this is what a lot of people are bringing up, Embracer Group bought Gearbox last year or 2 years ago, and they bought them for $1.3 billion. So, I'm not saying, that is a big deal, and Borderlands is gigantic, and maybe that is worth the price. I don't actually know. But again, to get these 3 studios, which are pretty big, and the IPs and backlog games, so you could do a new Deus Ex game. Obviously, Tomb Raider is going to get a new game, right? That's absolutely massive. And maybe the best part is you don't have to worry about playing games with words. You don't have to worry about playing games with which systems they're going to go. Embracer Group is a third-party kind of thing, right? So these games are pretty much guaranteed to not be favored to anybody, right? So it's not a Sony buying them and saying, okay, the next Deus Ex game, exclusive. Next Tomb Raider game, exclusive. Now, maybe that's not as big of a deal to some as, another IP from another studio, but that is still, those are IPs that I would prefer stay, multi-platform. And then you have Square Enix keeping the rest. Kingdom Hearts, you can make deals with Kingdom Hearts, but Kingdom Hearts is Kingdom Hearts. Life is Strange, that could be a thing in the future that could go somewhere, right? So we'll see if they sell off those kind of properties, but this is gigantic, and I think Jeff Grubb mentioned it, and this is an interesting thing that stood out to me as well. What's funny is $300 million for the studios and the IPs that go along with them. On Friday or Saturday, we just talked about Warner Bros., right? And the idea with Warner Bros. Is that they want to do two different parts. They want to sell the studios, say, hey, take WB Montreal. Now, you don't get anything with WB Montreal. You just get literally those people, okay? So you have to evaluate the talent if you think the talent's worth it. Now, you pay us for that studio. We will give them to you. Now, if you want to make a Batman game, oh, no. Just because you bought WB Montreal does not mean you get the Gotham Knights license, or to make like a Gotham Knights 2, let's say. No, you have to come back to us and then license, right, rent our IPs, and then you can do it. So they want to basically double dip, which is smart, I guess, if you can pull it off, but it's also very stupid because I guess the rumor is they're having a very hard time selling any of their studios because you're only buying them for the talent. You're not buying them for the IP. So you get NetherRealm. You don't, well, again, NetherRealm I think is confusing because I don't know if NetherRealm actually owns Mortal Kombat, but you get Avalanche. That doesn't mean you can make Hogwarts Legacy 2. You have to go back to WB and license out, you know what I mean? So I know that it doesn't have anything to do with this, but it is something, right? Because somehow Embracer Group pulled it off and I think it's just because, again, Square Enix doesn't really want to be here anymore. You know what I mean? They don't want these studios. They don't want these people. They don't even want to be in games anymore. They want to do other. Now, they're going to probably find a way of blockchain, all that stuff, integrating it, but for, again, exaggeration purposes, they don't really want the Western gaming market. They're more than content with what they have, again, Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, and and their studios actually don't really do that well. While people do bag on them, and it's like, Guardians of the Galaxy comes out, it's incredible, and then maybe it sells okay, maybe it doesn't, but they look at it as a financial disappointment. To be honest with you, according to like records, they are actually kind of right. Considering there is very little to almost no profit margin to these studios, yeah, the money they put into them to make these games, they barely make it back. So I am hard on them. It's like an EA thing. We talk about EA with like Battlefield, and Battlefield sells 10. They say, we were really looking for 12. But you know what? Maybe there's a reason. Maybe, EA's separate, but maybe there is a reason they say those things, because it does seem like, yeah, Guardians it made the money back barely, and then it didn't make any profit. So that's kind of an issue, and so I can understand it. And again, those kind of things do affect the sale price. But overall, I would say this is an incredibly good deal for Embracer Group. Obviously, they have a lot of other, Gearbox. They have THQ, among others. So they're building. Now, they haven't really strung together a great, run in terms of like consistency, but I mean, they're building and they're spending a lot of money, and hopefully eventually, to get a new Deus Ex game, I think is worth it, because I love Deus Ex. Tomb Raider, obviously, keep that going, and just to, I guess, make sure these companies or these developer studios. Well, I guess one final thing, nobody's said it yet, so I don't know. How the heck does this affect Crystal Dynamics, right? Because Crystal Dynamics still doing Avengers. Now, Avengers carries over, so they can still, do DLC for Avengers. They couldn't do an Avengers 2, though, unless they went back, okay? So you have that, I guess, idea. So, what do you do, though, with Microsoft? Because we know Crystal Dynamics is basically co-developing Perfect Dark. Does Embracer Group take them out of that and say, well, no, we bought them because they're going to be doing our stuff now. They're not doing your stuff. So that could actually be catastrophic for Perfect Dark, right? Because it sounds like, based off rumors, they could actually be the lead. They could actually be leading it. So if you take them out of that, or I don't know, does Microsoft pay? I mean, I don't know a lot of these answers, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's also, people are saying, why didn't Microsoft just buy Crystal Dynamics? If Square Enix is selling them individually, you know what I mean? Like, why couldn't Microsoft just swoop in and say, well, we'll just take one? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're busy with the Activision stuff. Maybe they just didn't want to. They didn't want to buy Crystal Dynamics. Maybe they didn't have faith in them. I don't know. But it's going to be, I wonder, because I haven't seen anybody really talk about that or them make a statement. Does Crystal Dynamics continue making Perfect Dark, or do they get pulled out? I don't know the answer to that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, so you know when all these videos go up. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you guys on the next video.